everybody. I'm an addict called Bruce. Holy God. I want to thank this committee and everybody who took part this weekend to practice our first tradition, all the unity I felt here. And I got ripified, I guess they call it, about 6 years ago, and I haven't left since. And just this place, every time I come here, I feel the same. And I can't even describe it in words. So, as a sponsor, I get to sponsor men. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes they make it simple for us. And so this guy asked me, he moved here, I'm sure he's going to tell you about New Mexico because he always talks about it. And that's where he came from. And then he got back to Syracuse, New York, and he had asked me to sponsor him. And, you know, he wasn't very discreet. He walked up and he goes, I need a sponsor and you're it. Okay. Guess I was powerless. So we jumped right into it. He was real willing to do it. And he had already had some under his belt, so he was willing. And he made the effort like it says in it works how and why, you know. And he's been doing it ever since. And he does it to the best of his ability. So I get to sponsor somebody that is just like me. Cantankerous, funny, and sometimes unwilling, but he does it. Does the things he doesn't want to do. So, listen, I'm standing up here thinking I'm the speaker. I'm like, wow, what do I say? I'm nervous as hell. They told me that's God shaking the truth out of me. So, anyways, without further ado, I'd like to introduce John D.
Holy smokes. It's good to see you guys. My name's John. I'm an addict. You know, most of the time I have lots of words. I'm good with words. I like words. And right now I'm not sure what to say. I've spent the last couple of months trying to figure out what I was going to say. And I just threw them all away. I had all these plans. I had all these things that I was going to say out there. Everything that I thought would sound wise and profound. And my name's John. I'm an addict. And that's part of who I am. I love my life today. I guess, you know, I heard it a long time ago. I got clean in New Mexico. I got clean in the little town of Alamogordo, New Mexico, which almost nobody has ever heard of. I got to New Mexico from upstate New York, where I was born and raised. And the reason I went to New Mexico was because one time a while ago, I have a younger brother, and he wasn't a lot like me. You know, he still is a pretty good man. He's a really good man. That's my brother Larry. And Larry was married to a woman named Joanne. And no, we didn't do anything. But Larry got tired of me going to his house and knocking on his door and says, "Hey, Larry." He says, "Oh, John." And it wasn't a, "Hey, John, I'm glad to see you. I'm glad you're here. You're looking good, man." His line was, "What do you want?" And I would do that on a regular routine basis. And my brother Larry and his wife Joanne would see me coming up the driveway. And by that time I was walking because, you know, the car had already gone up in smoke. And he and his wife took to going upstairs and pretending they didn't hear me knock. Most of the time, I went. I just said, "Oh, well, they're not here." And this one time, I knocked on the door and nobody answered. And I knocked on the door and nobody answered. And I knocked on the door and nobody answered. And I thought, oh, they're not home. So I walked in the house. And I thought I was all by myself. And Larry and Joanne were upstairs. I didn't know that. I thought I was alone in the house. There was this whole bunch of racket going on downstairs. I don't know how many of you remember, they used to call them portable TVs. They only weighed 40 pounds. You know, a 23-inch screen was like this. Well, Larry and Joanne came downstairs and caught me walking out of their kitchen door with their TV set, and I was going to borrow it. Shortly after that, he and the rest of my family got together, and they bought me really a gift, but I didn't think it was a gift at the time. They bought me a one-way airplane ticket to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, Albuquerque in New Mexico, the biggest city in New Mexico is Albuquerque. And, well, New Mexico is an actual state. And there are more cows and cattle in New Mexico than there are people. There really are, not to mention horses. They bought me a one-way ticket, and they said, see ya. And I flew to Albuquerque with basically nothing. I think they gave me like $30. And they said, well, actually, they didn't say anything. Basically, they said, don't come back. And that's how I arrived in New Mexico. I spent a good long time there. I had a couple of good jobs, and I smoked them all up. And at my last job was I got fired from. I told everybody back home that I'd retired. And I was 54 years old, and I was an addict, and unemployable was my middle name. Nobody would take me anymore. I really didn't like that much. I didn't have anything else to do, so I did what I did back home. I made dope. I know how to cook things up. So that's what I did. I had a house. I don't know why anybody was dumb enough to loan me money to get a house. But they did. One day, I got a notice in the mail saying that they were, when you do it with a car, they repossess it. And right now I can't think of the word for repossessing a house, but that's what they did. Evicted me. And they threw me out. When they evict you, that's a legal process. And the Otero County Sheriff, that's the sheriff of the county that I lived in, they wrapped yellow tape all around the house. And the tape had on it, sheriff's line, do not cross. If anybody crosses I don't remember what it said, but if you cross the tape, if you see somebody crossing the tape, call the sheriff's department. Well, they didn't care if any one of you guys crossed that tape. They were talking about me specifically. Things were really bad. And I had a dog. Dog's name was Rosie. Most of the people that live in New Mexico live on a reservation. There's Navajo, there's Apache, there's a bunch of tribes out there. She was a res dog. She was a res rescue. That was one of the best things that I ever had. And Rosie was like my lifeline. So one day, I was standing outside the tape that went around my house, and I lived in what they call the Tularosa Basin. The Tularosa Basin is where White Sands, New Mexico is. White Sands is a desert, just like you see on TV, with the big white sand dunes and no water and cactuses growing, and there really wasn't much green. And I was ready to take a walk across the basin, across White Sands. That was about 60 miles. And on the other side of the desert was a mountain range called the Organ Mountains. And my plan was to go on a walk. And it was in August, and it was hot. By hot, I mean like 106, and no water anywhere. My plan was to walk across the desert with Rosie, and if I made it, God intended me to live. When I was sitting outside the tape, waiting to start my walk, I really didn't plan on coming back from the walk. And a good friend, a man that used to work for me, he was the foreman of the crew that I ran. And his name was Jim. And he became my first sponsor. But before that, he rescued me. He pulled up and he had this big blue Chevy pickup truck. And he's a New Mexico boy. And it's a big blue Chevy truck with four-wheel drive and air conditioning and naked lady mud flaps. And he pulled up and he said, "John, what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, hi, Jim. I'm going for a walk." And Jim said these words to me that saved my life. He said, "John, get in the fucking truck." So I did. The people that I know that recover went through something like that. You kind of reach that point of total despair. I thought that I was a total failure, that I was a waste, that I was just no good. My family had thrown me away. And I was a loser. And everybody who wasn't like me was a loser too. And nobody else was like me. So I got in Jim's fucking truck. And he let me stay at his house. Jim was in recovery. And the only thing I had to do to stay in his house was go to meetings with him. I mean, it was terrible living in the house. It was about a 2,000-foot ranch. He had a well. He had a car. He had a beautiful wife. He had a beautiful daughter. He had a crazy son. I stayed there, and I went to the first meetings. I hated it. I didn't want to be there. All I had to do to pay for rent was go to meetings with him. All I had to do was to stay in an air-conditioned house was go to meetings with him. All I had to do to eat his food was go to meetings with him. All I had to do was something real simple and easy. And me being an addict, I didn't want to do that. Jim was probably my last friend. Jim was my first sponsor. And Jim saved my life. He tried bringing me to, he was in AA. And he tried bringing me to his AA meetings. And I said, "But I don't like alcohol. I still don't like alcohol. And when I went to my AA meetings, I talked about dope. And there was this one AA member who was real, I considered him obnoxious. And he came up, well, we were at a meeting and I was sharing about using. And he piped up and he says, "Yo, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. It's for us here alcoholics. If you want to talk about that shit, you need to go to one of them meetings." And I said, "Fucking A, I'm out of here." And I headed for the door. At the door, there were 3 AA members blocking the door. And they said, "John, go sit down." And I said, "But he said." And their response to my complaint that he said to leave was, "He's an asshole. Don't listen to what he has to say." I didn't have much self-will left, except I don't want to do what you want me to do. I was a regular whiner. And so I did. Now, this guy complained, and they told him to shut up and sit down. And I thought, oh, somebody's taking care of me. So I stayed. And then after a while, a few meetings, somebody said, they got Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And I didn't know what that was. And so I attended the first NA meetings. And Jim took me to those NA meetings. He came to the NA meetings with me to make sure that I went through that door. And that I stayed the whole fucking meeting. I couldn't stand it. It was really bad. I have never gone to jail for dope, any kind of dope. I've been to jail 3 times. 2 times for soliciting an undercover policewoman for an act of prostitution. That was my first 2 times. The third time was a little more serious. New Mexico is a state where you don't have to. You can't carry a firearm. You can't carry a firearm concealed. And by concealed, they said, you can't have a flap on your holster. So that meant pretty much everybody carried in New Mexico. And so everybody had guns. I had guns. And bad stuff happened. The other guy came in second. And I tell people I came in next to last. It's one of the biggest regrets of my life. I hadn't done anything like that for a long time. My background, I got into drugs initially a long time ago. I was in the military. I was in the Marine Corps. And we would go out on these patrols, and this is how I found dope. We'd be out for 3 or 4 days. You have to carry food with you. And I'm old, so we had C rations. And it was a box of food, canned food, tinned food. We could either carry 3 days worth of tinned food, which probably was 15 or 20 pounds of food, in cans, which you can't throw away, you got to bring back with you. Or, as an alternative, you could get a little bottle of these little white pills. And the Marine Corps called them a fatigue management tool. So I became addicted to amphetamines. I like speed. I drink a lot of coffee, and I've been asked about that, not by Bruce, but other people have said, well, what about all the caffeine you drink? And my response to that is, what about it? I've gotten to where I don't really care about a lot of things anymore. What I care about is you guys. It's easy to stand up here and talk about. I've got stories. I've got 74 years of stories, and I can't I can't tell you 74 years of my life. I can tell you when I came in, I'd lost everything. I can tell you when I came in, I didn't want to live anymore. I can tell you that when I came in, that I had to come in and come in and come in and come in. I used to tell people that, my name's John, I'm an addict, I relapsed last night. My name's John, I relapsed. I have 3 days. My name's John, I'm an addict, I have a day. I got clean, I stopped using this morning. I did all that. Last night I was at a meeting here, and there was now because I'm 74, I could call people who are 54 young. I like that. That's when I came in. That's my second birthday. I was 54 years old. And there was a young man there talking about feeling like he was a failure because he started getting clean. He had time and he went out. He had time and he went out. He had time. Sounded just like me. It's like a broken record. And he said, he just felt like a failure. One of the things I learned in New Mexico was that this is Narcotics Anonymous. I love Narcotics Anonymous. One of the things I learned in Narcotics Anonymous is there's no such thing as failing. I am not a failure. There are lessons, and the man that told me that, I said, what do you mean? What if I go back out and I die? And he says, well, you won't do that anymore, will you? So one way or another, I had to learn that lesson. And that's how I learned that lesson, is I didn't die. And like a lot of us in here, I tried to die a lot of times. People talk about feeling bad because they overdosed and almost died. Every time I used, I tried to overdose. If there was dope left, there's no such thing as I'll save it for tomorrow. Everything's got to go. My sponsor says, well, it's a fire sale. Everything's got to go. So I had to use it all up. Sometimes I'd come to the next morning or the next day or the next 2 days. And I'd wake up and I never said, oh, God, I didn't die. I'd wake up or come to or whatever it was, and I'd go, oh, fuck, I'm still here. I really didn't want to be here. I can't tell you how many times I tried to do that. I told people that I wanted to die, and they would say, okay, it's a lesson. And there's nothing but lessons in Narcotics Anonymous. The lesson that I'm a failure is a lie. That's the disease talking to me. Our book talks about the disease all the time. The thing about the disease is it's treatable. It's incurable. It means it doesn't ever leave me. I was in Southeast Asia and I caught a disease called malaria. And for the longest time, they didn't have a cure for it. I would relapse from malaria. I would get this terrible fever and aches, and it was awful. And I hadn't done anything wrong. All of a sudden, it hit in my bones. That's a relapse. If you've relapsed, what it means is that you had recovery, and then you lost it. When I told people again and again and again that I relapsed last night, I just hadn't stopped using. I wasn't done yet. I wasn't done yet. It took a long time. I still don't know if I'm done. You know, my latest clean date is December 2nd, 2003. That wasn't my first. That was not my first clean date. That's my last one. I don't want a new clean date. I can make that decision. That's step 3. I can make that decision anytime I want to. If I feel like I really got to use what I tell this is a trick one of my sponsors told me, was that I tell myself, maybe tomorrow. Last night I heard something I hadn't heard in a long time. And I don't know if anybody else knows it, but does anybody else know what the record in NA is for staying clean? 24 hours. Day at a time. That's all I get, a day at a time. I love my life today. I hated my life as an addict. And the reason I kept trying to die was because I hated my life as an addict. Today, I'm John. It's still true. It is absolutely still true. Today, I'm John. I'm an addict. Before I came in here, I was John. I was an addict. The difference between then and now is that my name's John. I'm an addict. I'm a son. My name's John. I'm a father. My name's John. I'm an uncle. My name's John. I'm a friend. My name's John. I'm a sponsor. My name's John. I'm a sponsee. I love all of that stuff. My life today is amazing. I'm 74. My body is crumbling. My time in the military left me physically erect. Erect? No. A wreck. My body, I have arthritis. I have psoriasis. I get hurt easily. I get injured easily. Sometimes it's hard for me to walk upstairs. What I've learned to do in Narcotics Anonymous that I refused to do before was say, hey man, could you give me a hand? One of the things I love about my sponsor is that I can call him up and say, hey Bruce, this is going on. And we talk. One of the things that happens when one of my sponsees calls is they say, hey John, I need to talk. My response to my sponsees is the same as my sponsor's response is to me. And that's, okay, what do you want to talk about? My sponsor gave me this. Everybody I talk to in NA gives me something. My sponsor gave me, one of the things my sponsor gave me was when I call, it's sometimes very difficult for me to say, oh, this is going on, man. She just did me wrong. The bank's on me again. The IRS is calling. All this stuff. And he say, well, instead of telling me all that stuff, he said, start out with just, and today I call him, I say, my name's John. Hey, Bruce, it's John. I'm just practicing. When I tell my sponsor and call him up and tell him I'm just practicing, that means that I have a way to talk to him without saying all the shit that's bothering me. My name's John, I'm an addict. My name's John, I'm just practicing. And I tell my sponsees to say that. Because I don't know about anybody else, but it's hard for me to go to somebody else and just start talking about, oh, my problems. I have luxury problems today. You know, The tax man's coming after me. Huh, it's not the drug dealer. It's not a hitman. You know, that's a luxury problem to have the IRS come after me. But the thing is, they're not after me today. That's amazing. That's a luxury problem. I was worried about what I was going to say today. That's a luxury problem. You guys aren't going to throw anything at me, I hope. You guys aren't going to do anything to me except give me a hug afterward, maybe. I'm addicted to hugs today. I love getting hugs. I was so upset about this whole coronavirus thing because we were stuck with knuckle bumps. Or, nope, I got my mask on. So anyway, this has been a really great weekend. I was prepared to just whine and complain about it because it was wet, it was rainy, it was cold. Luxury problems. They were all luxury problems. So I don't know. When do you guys want me to shut up? I'm serious. A serious question. What are we doing on time? No, I mean,
it's almost noon.
What does that mean? Do I want to keep going? It's only been 15 minutes? It's easy to do. I don't worry about stuff like that anymore. I mean, I do because once I get talking, once I get on a roll, it's hard to stop. Yesterday, somebody was talking about going back to school and worrying about going back to school because they'd been out for so long. They were worried about, how do I do this? Well, my name's John. I'm an addict. And all the other stuff I just said. And I could say I'm all that again today. When I moved back here from New Mexico in 2007. And I went from being a bankrupt wreck to buying a house. It was awesome. When I came back to New York, sometimes I love New York, sometimes I hate New York. It's the same with me anywhere. If I lived in Ripley, sometimes I would love Ripley and sometimes I'd hate it. And that's just me. But the thing is, I get to live there. Today, I get to come to Ripley. Today, I get to have my son back. I get to have my daughter back. I have a second daughter. My youngest daughter was named Courtney, and now her name is Toby. She went through, I guess you call it gender reassignment, and I still love Toby. She is my child. He is my child. And I get confused with that. But you know what? She doesn't mind. I used to worry a lot about whether, oh God, sexual adventures, man. As an addict, sex was coin of the realm. You could if you looked around, you could find somebody to trade dope for sex. Either way, you want it, you're going to get it. And I've been right there. After about the third day up, I'm up for anything. And I don't really care. That's the thing. That's just it. You want me to do what for what? Okay. Romance. What's love? Who is it? Tina Turner. What's love got to do with it? I love being me today, and I don't have to be anybody else for anybody else. I guess that's the message I get. I've led two lives. I've led 2 amazing lives. Once was a dead end, literally a dead end. I'm a musician. Last night we had a jam session down at, what room was that? Vocational. One of the reasons I come to Ripley, one of the things I love about coming to Ripley is either Friday night or Saturday night, there's a bunch of musicians that hang out in one of the vocational rooms, and we play music until it's stupid late. And we just get together and jam. I saw people there that I haven't seen in years. At least 1 year because of the coronavirus thing. You know, we didn't have the conventions. Speaking of conventions, you know, we talk about service work. My name's John. I'm an addict. This T-shirt is from our Heart of New York area retreat. It's a camp out. It's on the weekend after Labor Day. It's at a place called Delta Lakes Bible Conference Center. We have chalets, and a chalet, in other words, is a lean-to. It's full of cobwebs. You got to clean it out. The beds, they've got beds in there, and they're solid wood, plywood, not even good wood. And they just, go in there, you bring an air mattress, you bring a sleeping bag. We have bonfires going all weekend long. We sing music. We talk about recovery. We talk about things that go on in our lives. And it just goes on and on and on. It's a great event. If you're looking for something to do come September, I'm going to invite you to go to the Heart of New York website, Heart of New York, and look up our retreat. It's a great event. And I think I'm about running out. I'm going to start lying here pretty soon. So I'm going to close. And I'm going to tell you guys something I learned to say. And I learned this in Narcotics Anonymous. Is that I love you all. And there isn't a fucking thing you can do about it. So with that, I'm going to close. And you guys have a good, safe trip home, wherever you live. And thank you very much for listening to me.